Mission fucking accomplished. Goon Swarm is not a threat.
Good luck with your all's dumb nullsec war snuffed out #1. Anunnaki Keepstar is next, and then come on.
There, then you were just going to fucking magically jump into EVE Online in a system, and it was just going to load, and nobody was going to call you fucking stupid later?
There's an Eagle fleet that has dive bombed a Megathron fleet. This is the bravest shit I have ever seen in my life.
The best possible shot to do something to the Imperium, and you fucked it up.
I talked a lot of shit over the last couple months. It's time to fucking eat some. And I showed up here to eat shit. Like,
the reason that this Keepstar didn't get contested, and I cannot make this up, is because of tie-dye.
Guess where goons are going to live after this war is over?
Current plan is 319, I believe, right?
Hell.
Hi, sick.
I can
People
tell you very
overreacting.
clearly, our Diplos didn't even fucking care. So, like,
What?
White daddy.
All right. Good evening. Good evening, 20 viewers. Thank you for tuning in to see
21.
some of your first. It says 20 at my end, and
yours is
I'm the
wrong,
one speaking, so I
per
think
usual.
mine's going to be correct. I mean, I am also one of them, so you could take your 21, take it down to 20, but you're one of them. I mean, I imagine most of us are currently, tuning in, just to bump the numbers to make ourselves feel good, make the red number bigger. I mean, that's the
I
EVE
am
Online
watching.
way, right? Is make
I
the
am
number go bigger.
Mhm.
Welcome, everybody. This is Untethered's first of several shows where we speak to CSM members, and this one is one that we're hoping to do several of, which is just having a nice chat with some of the nice people who are running. And we've got 3 people today. We've got Drake on. Hello, Drake.
Hello, thank you for having me on.
Thank you for being on the CSM. Clearly it hasn't made you want to crash out and not run again, because you're running for a second term.
Indeed.
Well, we don't know
excellent.
that he hasn't wanted to crash out. He may just
I
be
am.
good at not crashing out. I don't think we can discount the possibility.
And he hasn't got a
I
forum
mean-
post yet, so he's not running yet anyway.
Oh, he has
Right.
no
I am
forum post.
officially running.
No
Yes,
forum post,
sorry
you
guys.
fake fuck.
In that case,
It's
the
posted,
Drake
it's just
Idon is
hidden.
not a valid method member. So whatever Drake Idon says tonight, make sure you put your fingers in your ears and close your eyes and shake your head from
He's still got
side
9
to
days,
side.
though.
It's not.
He-
He's got 9 days.
though.
Well, I tell you what, we do have somebody else completely invalid who's just immediately left from his webcam. We have another invalid, hopefully shortly valid CSM applicant, the Puce Moose, who regular viewers of the show will already know. He's being watched
Hold on.
by
Am I being
Horrible Eye.
ambushed with this being a CSM interview? I was told I was hosting.
That is, no one told you that. Absolutely
Yeah,
nobody
that's
told
correct,
you
no
that.
one
We just told you you should
Mm.
come. Are you kidding me?
I'm being sabotaged.
What'd you think was
And-
gonna happen?
And additionally, we also have with us today a CSM candidate who this year has 200% more experience than last year. We have Frippy with us today.
Hello,
How are you?
hello. I'm doing wonderful, thank you.
Excellent.
And,
For
and
anybody
actually,
who-
just a
Go
quick
on.
thing. Unlike these other 2 people, I actually have a forum post up. So
Yeah, so basically, if you were going to be picking from this episode, the only person that you could actually pick today is Frippy. Now, Frippy, some people will remember your campaign from last year. You were, I might say, as far as the new player lobby goes, you were perhaps the only person actually running on a new player agenda who was actually also a relatively new player. So you had
yeah.
you had live what is Eve like for a new player today experience, and even 1.5 years old, that's still sort of young player, some baby steps for a lot of people. So I think it's safe to say that your platform one of the aspects of your platform being about the new player experience and what can we do for younger from a place of current experience rather than decade-old experience, things like that. Now,
Yeah.
if we just quickly go back to the top of the list again, if we go to you, Drake, you've most vocally been working a lot on Pochfin issues during this term on the CSM. Can you think of any other sort of ways outside of Pochvan that you've had input on, or is that really just kind of everything that came up?
One issue candidate.
I've actually done quite a lot of work on the outside. The main thing is bot bans and cheating. So once Pyrite suddenly became the big blocker to production and its price spiked, we had a ton of bots in ventures just appearing everywhere in local in HiSec. So I have actually spent quite a long time getting loads of those banned. They do come back because that's just the nature of botting, but we're constantly getting that sorted. Alongside help from Ariel, we closed a extremely old exploit on the ESI, where you could use it with the bots to constantly invite someone, and if that person was offline, it would immediately tell you straight away that they are offline.
Oh damn, that's a really old hole,
yeah,
isn't it?
and it's been going for a long time, and that is finally closed. It will now return the same status, which doesn't give any information, regardless if they're online, offline, in a fleet, anything like that. So that, obviously, the biggest effect of that, I guess, was in Pochvan because it's being abused a lot, and also in wormholes because it's an impossible to get rid of intel tool until we closed it. So that's probably the biggest thing that's affected outside of Pochvan. I also do a lot of stuff on the economy. So making sure that the economy is in a good state, which it's kind of been mismanaged in the past, I think everyone can agree. Because, to be frank, that's also a Pochvan issue, because before my time on the CSM, Pochvan was disastrous for the ISK economy because it just printed so much money for such little time to a tiny amount of people. And that's been brought under control, so to speak, much more than it has before. And that will always have knock-on effects going forward.
Well, you know what? I mean, I feel like as far as EVE players go, I pretty much keep up pretty well with changes and fixes that have been occurring. But I hadn't heard of that one. That's heartwarming to know that sort of comparatively under the radar things do get looked at as well. Excellent. Puce, the Puce Moose, host of the show.
Me.
Except not today, because
today.
So he's a host and interviewee. Puce.
Just a great guy all around.
You come from LowSec, obviously. So
Yep.
I imagine that means that you're running on a platform of feed me every single noob and every single ratting Ishtar in the game. Every PvEer deserves to die and should be presented before my guns, right?
Oh,
that's
absolutely.
a dream. It's a good dream.
No, I mean, I am going to be seen as a low-sec candidate, but I am trying to take a more holistic view of all of EVE, because I think that every single area of space impacts on all the other ones very heavily. You can't just make a change to low-sec, for example, and expect it not to affect like high-sec or null-sec. You can't make a change to null-sec and not expect it not to affect low-sec. I am pro PvP, but I am also pro PvE. I think a lot of the PvE systems in EVE have been untouched and are incredibly simplistic and not particularly engaging. One of the platforms I am running on is taking these old systems and improving them. Sure, CCP can put in like fancy new stuff, they can give new ships and things. I think that is good, but I think the sort of structure of EVE as a whole needs some love to support these new things and to keep players engaged with the game.
Okay. Well, I think when we sort of come back around for some extra detail, see if we can unpack, what some of the specifics might be from that. But Frippy, you're coming from again a different area of space. We've got Pochvan, we've got LowSec, and we've got nullsec. So from what I remember from when we talked a year ago, you came to EVE and more or less you went straight to nullsec to get established there.
Yeah.
Of course, correct me if I'm wrong, but now you are also the CEO of a corporation in nullsec as well.
Yeah, and a
not
Alliance
just
Diplo as well.
there you go. 1.5 years playing Eve, and there's rocketing through the different games that this game offers here. What are the sort of what do you reckon the broad strokes are about the things that you think you'd like to encourage CCP to visit and make changes to?
Definitely, I mean, as a PvPer, there's a couple different aspects of nullsec PvP which I think could be revisited, such as skyhook mechanics. I like what they've done with the new map feature, but in terms of the actual raiding and the time scale, and I think it should just be reverted to how it was initially, just because that was so much fun, and it takes away the primary focus of nullsec PvP from gate camps and DSS essentially, because that's the only two things you can really do outside of just like trying to kill ratters. And the second thing, and this is mainly since becoming a CEO, I've realized this, is that industry is apparently awful and compared to what it used to be. So there's a couple industry changes within my campaign that I think could be touched on and not completely break the game. And a lot of my campaign this year is sort of my own ideas, but also sort of some of my corporations and Twitch communities ideas sort of voiced through me. But it's a couple different areas: nullsec, highsec, not specifically any lowsec or Pochvin changes per se or wormhole space, but mainly just focusing on nullsec with a bit of highsec in there as well.
Okay, I think that to me it sounded like almost like when you're saying it's not just my ideas, it's ideas from your community as well. You sounded almost apologetic, but I think that's extremely important. I think that's the right way to do it. I think that if an idea is really good and has a lot of support from people in the game, then some people might refer to it as like idea stealing, but if it's a good idea, it's a good idea. So
yeah, it's more like for the last 6 months I've just been asking, like, for example, my corporation, my Twitch stream and stuff, that I told them I'll be running again this year. If you have ideas, just DM me on Discord and we get to chat about it. So
excellent. All right, so let's talk about PvP in this game, because Pochvin, lowsec, nullsec, these are all areas of the game that are dominated by their PvP mechanics. We were looking to add a fourth or even a fifth person to today, relatively short notice, and I was talking to some people who running on industry or PvE platforms as well, and it's not that they didn't want to attend, it's that they couldn't at short notice. So we do hope to have them on at a later time as well. But given that everybody here is hailing from primarily PvP dominated space, if we stick with you, Frippy, do you have any sort of grand ideas as to what might improve your PvP opportunities in nullsec?
I definitely think that I enjoyed when they added in sort of bubbles and the idea of bubbles on antiplexes and they're disabling it for players. And
Okay,
I think that one of the big things you'll find if doing PvP in nullsec, unless you set up a drag bubble on a gate, if you're trying to gate camp someone, you just bubble the gate straight away. If they're fast enough ship, they'll just crash the gate if they don't attack you. And I think that that has to make you sort of think about drag bubbles and stuff like that. I think that if somebody gets caught in a bubble, it should give them the sort of combat timer type thing, because they are being engaged in combat, whether or not they choose on whether to engage or not. They have.
Do you mean
sort of
the log off timer or the weapons timer?
The one that stops you from docking or gating, to sort of
so a weapons timer by merely being caught. So the equivalent. The typical equivalent of that would be giving somebody a weapons timer just for being pointed, because it's a point.
Yeah.
That's being put on you.
Yeah, but specifically for interdiction bubbles, and the only reason why I sort of say that, and it's a bit of a fucking out there one, but it's because if you have a group set up on a gate and they manage to time a bubble correctly in order to catch someone, and they get caught within the bubble, then if they're in something like a malediction that can go like 2,500, 3,000 meters a second, and you don't have a quick enough log time to kill them, yeah, that's a skill issue, but it's to sort of help the more sort of small gangs, more solo campers who want to go for the smaller targets. Because at the moment, for example, most of the people who solo Dicta camp are killing things like blockade runners and stuff like that. And they're not catching the smaller targets. So it's sort of to encourage and help out small gangs and individuals or duos helping to take out smaller targets.
I mean, I'm no stranger to a gate camp, and what's more, I'm no stranger to a gate camp in low sec, which, the vast majority of the time isn't bubbleable, and so we that kind of activity faces the challenge of getting a point on something and holding them from getting back to the gate, because they only got to go 12 kilometers, right?
Yeah.
And even though we don't have bubbles to pull them further off of a gate, unless they are insta align fit, which typically means that they are not PvP fit, we find ways to tackle them, using remote sensor boosters, using tackle range bonus chips, a combination of these things to still be able to catch them. Surely, this is just an opinion rather than a fact, obviously, but I certainly feel that using a bubble to get somebody off the gate is possibly enough. I mean, their counterplay to then try and escape by burning to the gate or burning out of the bubble and trying to warp off, something like that. Especially burning to the gate, giving them a weapons timer kind of screws them.
It's more just the reason why I say that is because they decided to jump into that system, knowing or unknowingly, with there being a gate camp there, and if they've got a quick enough ship to burn at to the gate, they can then burn out.
But that's not entirely true, though, right? Because when you take a gate, you can drop a bubble while somebody's still in session change, and there's nothing they can do about it, right? Like, especially when the server's under load.
If you're, if you're burning directly away, if you position something like a tornado with RT, which is fast locked just on the gate, as the malediction, for example, burns away, you can just try and one shot it. I think there's enough counterplay to people burning back to the gate already. You just sort of have to grab the right ships and have the right fits, I think. I'd also point out that there is an inherent huge issue with this, in that if I bubble the undock of like an NPC station, everybody who undocks, if they don't know I'm out there, is going to get a weapons timer and not be able to redock. And I could chain a whole bunch of bubbles in a large area around the station, so you just cannot leave.
It would essentially turn all stations into a de facto kick-out station because you can't get back in. On any suggestion, instead of doing a knee-jerk reaction, I have found I go to say, how will this be abused? And if that went through, the abuse would be a single dicta or a string of ults on dictas just perma-bubbling every gate. Because it will just stop. It would just simply stop all travel, because a bubble is large enough that anyone landing on the gate to get within range of the gate would touch that bubble.
They'll be 15 off.
Would this
15 to 20
would
off.
this also apply to anchorables? Because I'm sure people have seen the screenshots of some of the keep stars during the last big war.
Bubble
you could not leave that
very
grid.
Interesting at that point, all of a sudden.
Yeah. There would be no way of getting off that grid. You would simply just die.
I think if with that crazy idea I brought up, it would have to be just from dictas and not even anchorables, just from ship-based bubbles. But then again, you bring up the idea, as you said, you bring up the abuse of the stations and stuff, which is
one thing we could pivot this to, because we're talking about bubbles and gates. What do you guys think of giving a weapons timer to a dicta when it fires a bubble? Because dictas simply crashing gate over and over, firing bubbles, is kind of cringe. It's not particularly overpowered, it's just cringe.
I think Bubble Launcher is an offensive module, in the same way the Point is an offensive module, and it is a historic anomaly that isn't actually really consistent with anything else.
Agreed.
It is also currently inconsistent across docking. So if you dock with the dicta, the bubble just disappears. Whereas if you jump,
deliberate.
it persists.
That's deliberate.
Yeah. And if that is a choice they have made, have they thought about that on gates?
What I will say, Frippy, is that I think that there's there's something that resonates with this idea of bubbles causing a weapons timer. I know that there's a lot of people who kind of feel that by launching a bubble you should get a weapons timer, because of course a weapons timer doesn't stop you from cloaking. Yeah,
as heavy interdiction cruisers, the minute you put a bubble up using a heavy interdiction cruiser, they automatically get a weapons timer until they turn it off and then wait it out a minute. So if they, why doesn't, I'm with you guys there. I'm with you guys there. I think an interdictor should get a timer as well for launching.
But for launching, yeah.
Regardless of course, if they catch or not.
Yeah, I mean it would also, yeah.
Because the hick already gets one regardless. Even if you're just sitting in the middle of nowhere and you put the bubble on, you still get the weapons timer on a hick. So why don't dictors get it as well? And that would stop the dictor then crashing through to try and bubble the other side to catch the person.
I've always found the bubble weapons timer slightly perplexing, because you could have the argument, it's not directly offensive towards an individual person. Okay,
it is,
but neither is
a smart bomb, right?
But neither is a command burst, right? And a command burst gives you a timer as well, right? So it's a really,
that's very much a friendly action.
Well, exactly, but that's my point, right? Like, it feels inconsistent.
Has CCP ever discussed this? Like, have they given a reason behind there not being a timer? I feel like it's a thing for survivability of dictors, because they are. I mean, a hick has a lot more survivability and a lot more utility.
I can't answer the first thing because whether they have or haven't, I couldn't possibly say, but that will be under NDA. But for the second thing, who gives a fuck about survivability? They'll literally ammo the ship.
Yeah.
In some situations.
Also, the difference between a hick and a dictator is the hick having able to have like battleship tank if you fit it right, and whereas dictators are meant to be fast and agile and maneuverable, and you're meant to position them in places to snag targets. I mean, if you go from small going to big fleets, they have to pin down targets to allow the rest of the fleet to fuck them up, essentially.
Yeah.
All right, listen.
So I'm just playing devil's advocate here. I am leaning towards that dictators probably should have a weapons timer, especially seeing as it makes clear some weird niche mechanics, like the fact that if you have a bubble out in a system and you walk to a citadel, you're not going to tether to that citadel. And I've killed quite a few people who haven't realised that that's a thing. I mean, I feel bad because that's like, not communicated to you at all anyway.
In theory, if you went down the route of like a bubble gives you a weapons timer, then it's giving you one itself by putting its own bubble up. Just to Frippy's original point around weapons timers and bubbles in general. But yeah, to me, it feels. I suspect there was probably some historic reason for it that probably isn't relevant anymore. But at the time, there was some concern over it. It's kind of how it feels to me.
Let's give ourselves a new topic, and Puce, I'm going to put you on the spot. And Frippy was able to give us something quite specific that he's been thinking about. You got any specifics that you've been thinking about from any lists?
That's a very wide question.
Hey, listen, I left it wide for Frippy. Oh, Steel Series white headset. Just noticed, very nice, Frippy. Sorry, carry on.
not a sponsored stream, by the way.
Not a sponsored stream.
I mean,
what brand? What are you wearing today, Puce?
It could be.
I'm wearing Bose Quiet Comfort 45s.
Bose Quiet Comfort. Luke, what are you using for your audio today?
But normally it would be Corsair.
Corsair. I'm using some relatively cheap Logitech's Redline.
Oh, I've got the Corsair. I like the pirate ship. Corsair, if you're listening, I love you.
I think you should change to your boom mic on the headset real quick.
Think so?
No, it's not good. It's not.
I like not having tinnitus.
Right.
So.
Hey, listen. You've delayed long enough, Puce. Give me something that you think needs to change.
I'm not going to go for the big obvious one, and I'm going to instead talk about increasing opportunities for solo PvP in low-sec space. I'm going to talk about, for example, a PvE site that requires you to have a PvP style fitting to run it, so you're not locked into only doing PvE, and that potentially requires you to commit and stay on grid in order to get the reward. And I think this gives people an opportunity to go out there and be available for PvP while doing a ISK making activity, and gives an opportunity for solo players, small gangs, etc., to find these people, hunt these people, engage these people. I think that would be good for getting people into space and getting people ready to PvP.
So here's my counter to that. Bear with me. Hold on a sec.
Okay.
If this is, you know, you're designing a site so that a guy has to PvP fit for it, does that not mean that they're always just going to get blobbed anyway, meaning that they can't do the actual PvP and they've still got to run anyway?
Also, quick question: how would the game define what's a PvP fit and not? Like, would you have to have a scram or a point on it to class as a PvP?
You can only run the site if you've got a kill in the last 2 days.
So it's not the game itself defining, hey, you need to have these certain modules fit to enter this site. It is PvE that is runnable in a PvP fit, and you're not like gimping yourself. So at the moment, most of like deads, etc., you will be running them in a ship that is specifically fit to PvE, and probably won't have the types of stuff that you need to PvP somebody on it. So it is a PvE site that's gameplay is designed around being able to run it in a PvP fit. Now that does open up issues with like, if I specifically fit like for this and not to fight people, I can probably like min-max it, right? I think that's going to be a problem with anything ever added into the game, is that EVE players are going to min-max the hell out of it. But yeah, I want people to be in space and willing to fight whilst doing an ISK-making activity.
Okay, all right. So, what's an example of something that you always have on a PvP fit that you don't have on a P? I know that's a leading question. Actually, you know what? You know, I know you. I'm trying to serve you a correct answer on a plate. Obviously, this means tackle, right?
Well, Fan, I always put a passive targeter on my PvP ships, just so they don't know what's coming.
Yes.
No, tackle. Like I wouldn't define them as easy, just different.
If you can do them in like, the reason people use fits is sites are more challenging. So like being able to do but actually do them.
I don't think that's true. I think it's a different style. Like, purposely being fit into PvE, getting you more rewards. It's just like I don't really get what you're going for there. Why would it be easier? So what if, for example,
when you're in a PvE fit, you min-max it, so you do as much damage as possible while tanking,
Mhm.
bothering to tank only as much as you absolutely need to tank, so that you can spend the rest of your slots on more damage, on more speed, on more things like that.
So this sort of ties into another thing that I would like, which is more dynamic and engaging PvE that isn't just like I orbit a rock haven and spew out as much damage as I can whilst tanking enough. PvE that requires different sort of activities. So one of those is tackling. We could expand this to gang-based PvE, where I have my little fleet and everybody's doing an independent role. We sort of see stuff like this with diamond rats, where they have behaviors where they can fuck off and leave, and if you're not tackling them, they could just leave and you can't complete the site. This also sort of counteracts multi-boxing a bit, because you can't just run it with one, static setup of like arbitrators or whatever. You have to have people actively engaged and doing different actions in order to run this site.
Grief. Yeah, I mean, I suppose if somebody has to tackle, right? If somebody has to tackle the rat, it's really stopping you from sort of cheesing it at like 100 kilometers or something with your fleet, which is something that we see a lot of in low-sec, in like faction warfare battlefields, and a lot in pirate sites as well. I don't know if Drake or Frippy, you spent much time in low-sec looking at these things, but good grief, the optimal fits for running a lot of the PvE in faction warfare is simultaneously total coward fits as well.
Also
It's
designed to be as cheap as
painful.
possible for when you do die.
Oh, good grief! Oh, do you remember that? Do you remember when they introduced pirate factions to LowSec, and they were like, "Oh yeah, the PvE is going to be a lot harder. You're going to have to upship from your rubbishy T1 cruisers," and then it turns out you can do all of it in T1 cruisers.
I think the only
I
thing
would
I've
love
ever
to
done
see.
in LowSec is gate camps. I'm not gonna lie. This
Yeah.
gate camping with a no-sys with 3 sensor boosters. That's
There you go.
basically all I've ever done in LowSec. except through travel through it. It's like gate camping. So
Okay. All right. Hey, listen, Drake.
Mm-hmm.
What have you? You're on the CSM now. What have you been holding back that you want to get changed? That apparently you're holding as a way to make sure we vote for you again, rather than just getting it done.
I thought you should mention that the video that you're going to show later does have a little bit of an inkling on
the video
that.
that we're going to show.
Yeah,
So
that you promised to show.
Yeah, the video that we're going to show.
Phantom said yesterday, Drake, we're going to do the best stream you've ever seen. Please make a video. So I've laboured for 20 minutes to give you that video.
All right. Hey, listen. What can you give us something before the video that we may be able to play later that you think needs addressing still?
So I am very much of Phantomite's and Puce's persuasion when it comes to long range projection and the fact that it is just too strong
for this. He's given
He's doing it. He's doing it.
Yeah. It's the obvious one. It's
He's
going to
say it.
He's going to
say it. It's the one that gets the most hate because
it's a show where we weren't going to talk about jump gates.
I didn't get the memo. I only get the video memo. Sorry. But it is something that I believe a lot of other people agree does stifle content, and I understand that it's kind of like a you love it or you hate it thing, because for one side who is suppressing their content, it's giving content to other people. The trick is it needs more balancing. It has had some, which is a big improvement over a big long amount of years of essentially nothing, and that helped to quite a bit. But I think it still needs something that makes it far less of a global or universe-wide strategic structure. If that is as simple as fatigue, even though everyone hates fatigue, and for good reason, it's pretty boring. If the game's health is what is the end result, then it's that. And I can't really get into it because CCP haven't spoken about any other anti-black stuff, but Luke and myself and many other CSMs on the CSM 19 have spoken at length with each other and with CCP on it. There are things that we agree on, some things that we don't agree on. I would say it's been very productive. A lot. I thought coming into CSM 19 that particular subject would have been toxic as hell, and I don't think it has been. There's been arguments, but I would say all in all, I think everyone agrees that something should be done, and that if that's done well, then the game as a whole would be better off for it.
So I just like to gently point out that people have been agreed on it for about 5 years.
I'm aware.
And I asked this question at FanFest, and I got some unsatisfactory responses, and you can see my facial expression just fall in the video.
As a CSM member, what that particular dev said didn't gel with what the CSM 19 had spoken about at the summit, I would say. I think that's as far as I can say on that matter. I think it's very much a thing where CCP is very apprehensive of it.
I think the challenge always is, I think most people generally accept that there is a level of issue with projection currently. And I'm just going to use the word projection rather than specifically talk about jump bridges or wormholes or everything else, right? Because I think it's all interrelated.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the bit that is always going to cause the controversy is, there's probably a propensity, because we've been where we've been for 5, 6, when did jump bridges come out? And the modern iteration, 5 years, 6 years ago? Something like that.
The current version without fatigue has been about 7 years. here?
7 then, and is the propensity to kind of sledgehammer to the other extreme. And I think that the delicate bit is like, if you consider there's a problem, probably don't knee jerk to the other way, because that will cause 7 years of pain in the opposite direction. And it's working out where like a sweet middle is, right? Like, what is that? What should projection be, and what shouldn't?
I wouldn't really describe fatigue as sledgehammering in the other direction. I think sledgehammering in the other direction would be deleting antiplexes, which some people have called for. I don't think that's necessary. I think fatigue is a good middle ground in order to make them not problematic, but make them still usable.
I mean, go on. Sorry, you go.
One middle. I've always heard about the antiplex problem, and I've never really had a say on it. But one idea I've always thought about is, why don't you just limit the amount of antiplexes that can go into a certain region that scales with the amount of star systems within that region? That way, you have to be more sort of strategic about your antiplex placement and not just spam them out.
You would have to be more strategic about the placement, but as we saw with Equinox, it kind of just ends up with people trimming off the branches from like the main lines, and you have a main line where you can just zip across the region as fast as you could before.
That question correctly, as in a limit per region. Is that what you were saying for appeal? Did I miss?
Yeah, a limit per region. Yeah.
So the problem with region constellation system related limit mechanics is the ability to cheese it in the opposite direction. So if I'm going to ignore jump bridges for a second, and I'm going to go to the limit the number of systels you can have in a system, because that has been a historic argument, right? But the point is that then locks situations in mechanical ways. So if, like, I don't know, 4H and it's 20 citadels, well, I just anchor 20 citadels, nobody else can anchor anything, the system is now unsiegeable. You start to run into similar scenarios when you kind of talk about a region, because not one alliance won't necessarily hold an entire region. So you start to get into really weird kind of gameplay states if you add arbitrary limits per region, constellation, or system, at least in my view anyway. There may be a way
I would agree with Luke's assessment on that as well.
Odd behaviours that you don't necessarily expect.
I suppose something that comes to mind with sort of when you say limiting them to a region. On the one hand, if you limit it to a region and in an ideal world, 2 opposing groups hold half of that region each, right? One group could just use up that limit, and then if you say, it's per alliance, then you just spam friendly alliances so that you can get around the limit.
Or you just blow them up and then put your own one down as soon as you've blown up the other one.
I mean, perhaps. I mean, on the other side of that is essentially a huge blob of people that only another huge blob of people can fight.
It's just Mr. Nullsec, isn't it? Realistically speaking, most of soft Nullsec is just big blobs at the end of the day.
Well, okay,
that's a very complicated conversation, though, that I'm pretty sure is now going to lead into a rant by Puce and Phantomites. I'm going to sit back and watch.
You're not wrong, so I will instead sort of move it along. All right, so let's talk about capital ships. They're relevant to all of us, even if we don't actively use them. For example, me and Puce don't actively use them. Redline would use them if he logged into the game. Luke, your alliance is no stranger.
Sorry, I just
no stranger to using capital ships as everyday ships for various types of fleets and things like that. Frippy, can you tell us? It's a year and a half in the game. However, you are part of an alliance that regularly uses capital ships. If, for example, you personally don't.
I do crab beacons. So
there we go.
My most used ship is a PNI. So
you're a regular dreadnought pilot in that case. Perfect. Something that is on a lot of people's minds for well over a year now, and something that a lot of CSM people are talking about is carriers. Their purpose in the game. What should they be? Some people think they're useless. Some people still think they're overpowered. Does anybody want to sort of talk about?
They're both at the same time, because they are somewhat oppressive, or at least obnoxious, in one specific niche, which is Skynetting. And outside of that, aside from being a suitcase, they are utterly worthless.
Great for pushing raw calls.
They are very great for pushing raw calls, except for the fact that a single 2-point scram blocks it.
Yeah, true. I've seen a lot of Rockles die to being boosted by carriers.
So I am one of the few people who does capital gameplay inside Poshman, because you can't build capital Poshman, it's just grandfathered ones, and I've purchased as many as I can get my hands on. Frat has many times tried to boosh me my dreads.
All right,
off
when
the
you're
station.
rich, it's all good when you're rich, isn't it, guys?
I've got my Python. I'm shooting ventures in Poshford.
Get a load of the 0.1% here telling us how to live our lives.
But people have tried.
Maybe if I stop
carrier
buying
boost-
so much avocado toast in Jita, I'll be able to.
You got to pull yourself up by your bootstraps, fan. But people have tried the boost play to get my dreads off the station. I just fit a single scram them, and they
trying to
just
get your dreads
sit there.
off.
Yeah, and they just sit there looking really sad, and I just like, now what are you going to do?
So now they've boosted their own cap off.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of stupid. Like, they want it to have a identity, but the identity it's got right now is it does nothing unless it's in mass numbers and very far away. What I would like it to have, this is just my personal opinion, I think it would be very good as a singular, really good conduit role, where once it's conduited, it has very strong command bursts. And in order to facilitate that, the NSA right now is a death trap, because all it does is let you lock things faster while you die because you can't warp. Just give it a tank bonus so it can have like a solo role as the flagship of a gang that moves about. I think that would be a decent niche to carve out for the carrier.
So, stronger boosts. Stronger than what?
It could be
how they are currently.
Either how they are currently, maybe they're ever so slightly stronger than a command ship. So
they're not. They're a little bit weak. They're a bit weaker.
They're weaker but longer range than a command
That's why I'm
ship.
saying change it so it's stronger. Is my point.
So surely changing it so it's just stronger is just straight up adding harder to kill stat stick higher EHP bonuses to a capital fleet.
It could be, but at the same
all of the
time,
subs that are clustered on
you
it.
could make it so it only gets those bonuses when its NSA is out. So it cannot receive its own. It can only rep itself, and that's why giving it a tank bonus would help with that. It's something that puts someone's skin in the game to get a bonus on grid while committing something valuable.
I mean, obviously
He's getting his NSA out.
He's getting it out for the lads. We've very recently, in EVE terms, had the undoing of the resist nerf from surgical strike. So ships, particularly passive tanked ships that rely on higher EHPs rather than active reps, are notably tankier, and because it's resists, they get repped harder against damage. A lot more, well, a fair bit more than they were before this change. Personal opinion, ships are tanky enough now. Do we really want to start just piling on more EHP into the game?
If it was a sub-capital ship, I would entirely agree. But if you have to commit a capital to grid, which in itself should kickstart an escalation chain, I mean, being dreads.
As far as
I
I'm
think
aware,
that
people
is,
don't have problems bringing command ships as it is now, even in very large fleets.
yeah. And if you want to bring something
So why should we
large,
make it harder to kill when it's already fine?
because you're committing more to the grid, you're getting a longer, drawn-out fight, and you're committing something valuable that's harder to build compared to, say, command ships. And in terms of more survivability for that ship specifically, command ships are already extremely tanky. Carriers are not far off that, unless you completely buffer fit it. But that's why if you want to use these command bursts, you use the NSA, and you will need to local tank it because you're not getting your own reps. That's
So
just a
NSA
very
is
vague.
acting as a siege module, but for links in this case.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay, all right. Frippy, have you got any thoughts on where you might like to see
Carriers.
carriers be. Yeah.
Yeah, so the only sort of use I've ever seen carriers in terms of like outside a random person doing havens in them is in like, for example, sieges of keep stars where they're sitting like 1,000 kilometers away just with their fighters and shit, and it's tied and it's in general to see get them to
I
see
think we've
more.
got enough range in this game right now, haven't
Yeah.
we?
So the only things that I'd say sort of to buff carriers that I've had this discussion about is people have brought up to me stuff like allow their fighters to chase people if people warp off again. Apparently that used to be a thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
So
it did in a very different era, yeah, with a different
so
fighting mechanics. But yeah.
So that was one thing I was told. Another thing is carriers can assist fighters again, and maybe increase the bandwidth on carriers so they can use more fighters and maybe even heavy fighters.
I mean, isn't use more fighters? Isn't that much more efficiently handled by just up the damage of the existing fighters?
Well, it also adds more sort of swappability. So you can use, like, for example, DPS fighters, but also if you had more slots, for example, you could then also have more support fighters if you needed to swap out what role you were doing, determining what sort of activity you're doing with the carrier per se.
I mean, isn't that kind of the point of Eve though? Is it's all about choices rather than here, have everything.
But you can kind of do this, but you kind of have that with drones in certain ships that have a large drone base. You can bring, for example, damage drones, ETM drones, webbing drones, and or like swap them out regardless of what you need, regardless of the situation. It's the same ship. It's nothing to do with the fit. It's just the ship, and it has.
I think you should, if you want to increase the damage of the carriers, you would probably want to address the application of the fighters instead of just adding more fighters. Because right now, its application is kind of atrocious.
Is that something that you think
You've got to be careful with
you
that.
have to be very careful. I agree on that. Yes,
because we did have a situation in the Citadel era, which arrived with Citadels and a complete revamp of how all caps and super caps worked and were fitted. That all came at the same time, right? For a number of years, carriers, essentially in a large fleet situation, just became the new battle. They could apply to basically everything. They had incredible multi-100-kilometer range to do it. They had, ultimate damage type choice. As I said, they would hit everything. They would swarm. You could just one-tap battleships with them when you were in a large fleet of carriers, things like that. And on a smaller scale, because they could apply very well, and because they did plenty of DPS, and because they had plenty of hit points, people just went ratting in carriers as a pretty standard ratting ship. So they had the hit points to survive for a long time while help arrived, and they also had the damage and the application to just one tap scepters, right? And so when we had carriers that applied very well and did a lot of damage, they were comparatively, there's no absolutes here. They were comparatively invulnerable when used in the right space.
I mean, just to be fair, they could also fit a Sino at the time, which was also part of the calculation.
Sure. But people still ratted in carriers when it went to recons as well, and a system inhabited by a bunch of people in carriers just had one the recon just ready to rock, or even just next door or several jumps away because they've got capital hit points, right? A small gang isn't gonna sort of be able to tap a carrier before a recon flies 3 jumps or something like that in a lot of situations. It was a lot of invulnerability for one person, one single pilot. And I really don't want to go back to the era of it being feasible for these things to just be a fleet themselves that doesn't really require much in the way of.
I mean, to be fair, in the time that I've played this game, I've seen very little use of carriers, and I've heard a lot of stories of how they used to be amazing, but then they were too good, so they were just sort of nerfed into the ground.
Yeah.
And obviously, the whole question stems from, okay, how can we kind of backtrack that slightly? So we don't want to go back to how it was, but how can we get somewhere maybe in the comfort zone. Maybe instead of application or DPS, maybe it's something like or giving it Sino back. I don't know, something like that. I mean, and because
I
that
mean,
doesn't
Sino's an
necessarily.
interesting one. Sino's an
Just
interesting one because I do wonder if maybe the carrier shouldn't be aimed at being a DPS ship. Maybe it should lean into its support role.
because it's got
And
command
by
burst stuff,
yeah,
and it can already conduit jump people. So if it, for example, you just mentioned, which I didn't know, they used to have Sinos on them, give it a Sino back, because that way it's almost like the command control ship of the carrier world. I mean, obviously you've got faxes for Logi at the capital level, so have the carrier become the ultimate sort of like movement ship. Is there already suitcases? So give a Sino on them, and you can help like move big groups of people quickly.
okay. Puce, I know that I've been to Drake and Frippy first, and they've gone through some popular ideas. Anything you agree with, or any fresh thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the first one I'm going to say is just the hull price of carriers. I think should be lower compared with dreadnoughts at the moment. They're significantly higher, and I don't really see why. I agree with Drake to a point, and with you, Fant, that they should move more into a support role, whether that is buffing command bursts. I don't think I agree with making them more tanky, personally. And the Sino thing is also interesting. These are things I'm going to have to think more about. I'm not a capital expert, just putting that out there.
Here's a controversial one while you reply to that one, Puce. What about like a baby phenom?
Oh, the effect
That's
generator
kind of
thing.
that's kind of an essentially
All
that's
the
an
super
E-war.
carriers, E-war bursts, remote bursts.
Phenom is the double-edged one, right? Like, because phenoms are both positive and negative situationally.
Yeah, a little phenom generator. That's an interesting one. But yeah, I think they need to move into that support role. As has been said, we have faxes for Logi. A carrier does not need to be DPS, and I would be incredibly careful about improving application on fighters, because I do not want to go back, as you've said, to the era where they were just applying to everything and it was just carriers. I am a fan of what they've done with the conduit. I think that moves them into that support role more. I think they should continue down that path. One other, I guess, tangentially related thing with carriers is I think that the ship maintenance bay should be bigger. I don't see why the Dreadnought has the same size SMB as a carrier when a carrier should be able to carry. That doesn't necessarily impact on their like use as a as a ship directly in space, but that does make moving around space a lot easier for groups. And if we are going down the path of projection nerfs, I think that makes it easier for groups to move towards the action more easily.
Who here can remind me what the module that is only for super carriers called? The tactical recloner. Who here?
No. Just
Red
no.
used it during the siege of the Fraternity Citadel in Poshman. Or was it Fraternity Siege of the Rogue Citadel in Poshman?
But it's like we've used it before, but it was the only time that it was really used, like in anger. I think it was used in Delve during the war as well.
Yeah, the main issue with that module is the fact that the people who want to use it have to take drugs first.
What?
Yeah, you have to take a drug, otherwise you can't use it.
Okay,
The way it works
tell me how this works, because I've never seen it for obvious reasons.
Capsuleers in system who are in your fleet can eat a drug, and if they are podded whilst that drug is active in the same system and a super carrier has the recloner active, they will respawn in a pod next to it and be able to pick a ship from the maintenance bay.
Yeah,
this is so janky, isn't
it's
it?
really weird.
Yes, it is. It's extreme. So you essentially thought it's a really cool concept, which if executed correctly would have been genuinely very useful. But the fact that you have to mass produce these drugs, give it to every single person who's going to be there, make sure they all take it while they're in the system, because if they take it when they're outside of the system, then the effect doesn't work. It doesn't sync up.
No.
It's
It's
really bad.
Why is it not just a fleet setting that the commander sets?
Don't know.
Why don't they just take the drug element away from it and just increase the cooldown between the times the super carrier can have the module active, or make it have like a fuel usage, like if it doesn't have
That's a very good question, Frippy, and we'll leave it at that because that's never been addressed or answered.
Well, yeah, this is an example of something that was introduced by CCP, didn't seemingly work as intended, and then they just kind of decided that they weren't going to work on it anymore. Is the impression that I've got from the outside of not being a CSM. Yeah. Old weird systems that still exist in the game, but don't.
It's not even that old. It's just a weird fucking system.
well, it is actually. It's several years old now. When did Phoenix come out? That was
3 years ago, I think.
Was it only 3 years ago?
It was the first.
It was surely longer than that.
It was the first quadrant after
2020 or 2021.
Yeah. It was at the first or second quadrant after the finale of when Podfrin came to be.
That was in 2019, wasn't it? Podfrin coming into existence.
October 2020.
Podfrin was before 2020. Yeah.
It was October 2020. Podfrin was formed. I know that because in a few weeks, in 2 weeks' time, it's going to be Podfrin's 5th birthday.
It's going to be Triangle Day.
Yep.
I'd just like to point out that the first thing that comes up if you Google tactical recliner is a tactical recliner, and it's just a like a camping chair.
Please send that to Redline, and Redline, can you please show us on the stream what the tactical recliner looks like? In a few
I could actually send that to me as well. I can send it to CCP's monetization team. Maybe they can buff the recliner and then do some sort of like.
It's actually quite comfortable. The first one that comes up in the list.
I gotta see this.
They do look quite nice, actually. Yeah.
Hey, listen. What I'm going to do, guys, is I'm going to give you all three of you another opportunity to bring up another topic that you have something brief to say on, and after that, I think we'll move on to the it's quite brutal sounding, but why are you the right candidate that people should vote for type conversation as well. So rather than put one of you on the spot, do any of you have Frippy does? There you go. You go ahead.
Okay, so if you don't know, there's a setting on the in-game map called Interference. It's created when somebody links to a crab beacon. I think that mechanic is complete total shit in its current state because it allows whaling fleets of blopses just to look at the map and go, hey, there's a guy doing a crab beacon there, instead of actually manually going out and finding targets as you should as a whaling fleet. So how you could fix that, either allow interference to be generated on the map after at least one crab beacon's fully completed its life cycle, or two, get rid of the map mechanic entirely and it be shown in a different way, either on the in-game overview like crab beacons already are, or just remove it and have people start actually playing the game again and using their eyes rather than relying on a arbitrary color on a setting mode on the map.
Okay.
Can I throw a comment on that one?
Of course you can. Yeah.
So I'm mixed on them. Right, we run lots of crab beacons, we lose lots of crabs running crab beacons doing stupid things. However, they are fairly short-lived. How about making them only appear on the agency, or making them appear only if you're in the region they are running? So the interference only spreads out into the region. So hunters still have to go looking for them. They have to go into space, but you're not making it kind of, you must be in this single system.
What if it was like telling you, oh, you're in the same constellation? Yeah, you're in the same constellation. It's one of these things.
The stupid thing is, right, I can inside, like the minute I log on, I can just open up my map, put the interference thing on, and I can see where, for example, people in Fountain are running crab beacons, people up in fucking Venal are running crab beacons. It's like, that's stupid. I shouldn't have that information.
No, I agree. Galaxy-wide, it makes no sense. But I wonder if it should be narrower bands. So if you're in the same constellation, then you can see them. If you're in the same region, so still got to go hunting, but you're not trying to trawl every single system in Vale of the Silent looking for that one person running a crab beacon. By which point you've got an intel everywhere, and they've probably finished because you haven't got to them yet. For example.
Yeah. I mean, I just think that the fact is that I mean, even if they changed it to keep it exactly the same it is, but it shows up after one beacon has done a full cycle. The fact it shows up the minute you link, which is after a 4-minute timer, there's 56 minutes of you being on that beacon where it's already shown up. I think obviously the interference is generated by killing the drones and stuff. Why not have it spawn after one beacon has been done in that system? Because obviously you can only do one at a time in the system. So that way, it's not changing the mechanic that badly. You're just delaying the appearance of it by 56 minutes compared to when
I
it's
guess the question I would have on that scenario, if it only appears when the first beacon has been destroyed, is that not going to create an issue then, given the fact that it's going to be running a ship that is jumpable anyway? So you're just going to jump somewhere else within the maximum range of it and then pop up there, which means from a hunter perspective, okay, you know somebody within the jump range of a cap is currently running a beacon, but you're just playing whack-a-mole at that point.
Well, it's more my sort of entire prospect of, or sort of theory behind this is most people run beacons underneath a super capital umbrella in nullsec. This is sort of to allow people in smaller alliances outside of the super capital umbrella to be able to run crab beacons with less risk because they don't have the capacity.
So where in nullsec can a small group do capital PVEs?
You
can run crab beacons in low sec. People just don't do it.
Yeah, people do it in low sec. They use it to ring the content dinner bell. They do it as bait.
They do it when they are within range of their own, admittedly smaller, but umbrella nonetheless.
So, for example, I'll just give some examples of where you could do it that aren't sort of looked at in terms of like umbrellas and stuff. Would be things sort of more sort of the edges of the map, and we're not going to say too much more because I have actually scouted out some areas that would be really good for it and are not in super capital umbrella range, but would really benefit from this interference change, and actually you'd see a lot more people out in capitals doing capital PvE.
Maybe this would be sort of quite palatable if it came with a projection nerf at the same time.
I'd say slightly unrelated. Well, it's related, but it's a slight different part of the crab beacons. Is what is, Frippy, your opinion on the fact that you can only run 3 at a time is it 22 hours, the qubits regeneration time?
Yes, roughly 3 per character per day. My thought on that is I think that's completely justified by the amount of fucking money you make off them if you successfully pull off the full crab beacon and get the loot at the end. And considering officer spawns on them are quite frequent and you can get multi-billion-esque modules, I think the fact you can only do 3 per day per character is completely justified.
Yeah, but the officer ones are naturally depreciating items. So if more people are running the site, this is a big issue that some of the Poshran sites happened, which I've had to tackle in some of the site reworks, and one that still needs to be reworked is if you run one of the sites, you get X amount of money from the officer spawns. And then the second site, you get X amount money less a certain percentage, and your previous run is now also devalued because
you can't fight the free market, Drake.
Exactly. So
capitalism.
Yeah. So that's a naturally balancing thing, I would say. And a lot of people right now are just running it non-stop anyway, just across multiple characters.
I would also like to highlight something that is being said in chat, and I've been thinking this whole time, is these are lucrative things to complete, but by not appearing on the map until you've already completed one, you are effectively giving somebody a free run, unless somebody happens on them.
Well, I saw that in chat as well, and also it's sort of the other argument is, okay, so you're giving somebody a free crab beacon, okay, cool, but no other like PvE combat site in nullsec it appears on map outside of and correct me if I'm wrong, outside of the fact you can see how many pirates have been killed in that space, so you can actually get an idea of what systems are ratting.
I believe in the agency you can see the location of anomalies like rock havens, etc.
You can also check within a certain range the ESS.
Yeah, the ESS payments is one thing. So from a PvP's perspective, when I take out ESS robbing fleets, I just look to see where the ESS stuff is, and I know there's going to be rattings there.
So what's the value difference though between a beacon and a haven? Let's say.
Well, on a beacon, it's I mean, you're paying, let's say 80. Its current price is 84 million for a beacon, but then on that beacon, you're making, if you're good and efficient, you're making about 60 billion ticks. 60 million, not billion, sorry, 60 million ticks. And the loot from completing the actual beacons, you're making about 100 million of ticks per beacon if you're quick. And the loot at the end usually is 200 million plus usually.
Okay, so but I think that's kind of but that probably answers the point, right? Which is, yes, certain things do appear in agencies, but you're not going to hunt them like havens and stuff like that. But with the beacon, like a free beacon is quite a lot of ISK, especially if you're going to run it on multiple characters, because that's multiple free beacons, right? Because you just go to a different system, run a different one. Don't get me wrong, my view has always been like more pilots in space means more people are going to have an interaction with each other, and more interactions means those might become violent. Hopefully, I don't conceptually. I don't like the perfect intel thing of like I'm in Venal and I can see a beacon in Fountain, and because I've got my wormhole projection map that I've done through Metro, I can get to you within 5 minutes or 2 minutes. Like, I agree that is a projection conversation. The question there is it a projection problem, or is it we want people in space, which means you do the local detection thing of like you see what's in your region because then you've had to travel to that region to go looking rather than just it on the other side of the map and use a wormhole. I think they are quite valuable sites, so I don't think they should be completely invisible, even one, because I think that's just a runaway ISK printing process at that point, which then has wider knock-on problems game-wide at that point.
Yeah,
To
the
my
idea of
mind, anyway.
maybe limit the, like you said, if it's in the same region or as Phantom said earlier, the same constellation, you still get the same feature, but you just have to be there. So it sort of goes back to my initial point of the hunters have to actually be hunting, and this comes from somebody who does like hunt crab beacon players and all of that stuff as well. So
Okay.
So
before we go to the why to vote for you kind of things, does anybody have any extra specific topics they want to bring up? I think we're
Drake,
going
do you want to go?
I think probably the main one is one of the big topics that I foresee in the next few years is CCP have done a bit of a paradigm shift on their monetization strategy, as in they're no longer doing these ridiculous sales over and over again. I think a big topic that CSM 20 will have to contend with and 21 in the elections will be keeping CCP to stick to that plan, because the moment they don't, then the entire point of the plan falls apart and player behavior around those sales will go right back to where it was, where no one was subbing outside of those sales, no one was buying skill extractors outside of those sales, etc. So I think that's while it's not something that is a topic right now, it is something that absolutely needs to be kept on top of.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that is one that's on my list of things, is the monetization of sub prices.
You stole my fucking list.
I mean,
I was
whoever
gonna
gets
hit
on the forum first, it's their list. I'm just saying, both of you need to get your forum post out.
Hold on, let me just quickly put it on my forum post, and I can. That's my list.
Well, we can go back to where Phantomite said, if it's a good idea, you can take it. It's fine.
Yep. I think that's a pretty universal complaint from players, is like, why is the sub price this high? But then you're also doing a really weird gamification thing of getting it for discounts.
Well, it's even more than that as well, because this game lives and will, in the long run, even though it's a very long, old game, it will live and die on take-up of new players. And right now, it is much more expensive for a new player to play the game than it is for a veteran to bulk buy, because they understand the bulk buying, the benefits and where to find it. And that was a big driver of why CCP has come out with their new pricing strategy that did their blog on, or at least that's what my view is, because I was drilling it into them non-stop on calls. But there's still more to go. The fact that they increased the sub price to $20 and then immediately just started doing sales just signal to everyone that they don't believe in their sub price. And it has absolutely hamstrung them on getting new players into converting to the game, because now they're like, oh, I want to, I'll play this game. It's really nice. I played for a month. I'll sub $20. Fuck off. Okay, let's try and get Plex. Plex has gone through the roof. Oh, I'll have to farm for a month to get it. It's a big, it's a big barrier to not so much entry, but a conversion to a sub price to actually play the full game.
I agree, and also to carry on with the new player thing, right? So obviously there's a lot of gated things behind Omega, right? So yeah, you have some game time with Alpha, but them throwing up the prices of subscriptions does stop a lot of potential new people, the retention of those new people. So they may play for a month, but because of the sub price or because of how hard it is to get Plex in game due to cost and what they have to do as a new player, they don't have a lot of options to make money. They either have to commit to the purchase, and they're really sort of taking a leap of faith there, because in 2 months they might just decide to quit the game and it's wasted money. So
Yeah.
I think your
It's-
point's very valid. Yeah.
It's the same on the Plex as well, because if a player spends all their time to farm to sub to Omega, they now know they're on the clock. They have 30 days to get enough money for the next sub to Omega, and they get stuck in this loop. They will get more efficient at it, but they have to stick it for a long time until it's no longer just a fucking chore for them.
Yeah,
I think the implication that you can farm your way to Omega for new players is probably like one of the worst things they can know, because you can farm your way to Omega, but it requires a lot of game knowledge and like pre-set up efficiency, or it requires an awful lot of time and effort, and you're just going to burn out on it.
Yeah, exactly. I agree.
Yeah. I mean, when I've pulled like IRLs into the game, I've never actually told them they can actually buy Plex with ISK until they've actually like decided to commit to the game, just because like you just said, don't want them getting burnt out, just thinking, oh, I can actually avoid spending real money, and actually if I just do this for like 20 hours a day, and it's like, I agree.
30 hours a day is a good alliance name. Hey, listen, I'm gonna go to you guys and we'll get your why
Hold on,
vote
I've still
for
got
me.
one more thing.
Okay, you do. All right, Steve Jobs.
Cool.
One more thing.
Just one more thing. So, one of the bits of my campaign that I haven't hit on so far really is I want frequent and meaningful ship balance changes from CCP. By meaningful, I mean changes to ships which push a underused ship actually into the meta and make it competitive. And by frequent, I mean that you then take those ship changes and you adjust them up or down depending on how problematic or how like underperforming they still are. So we got some ship balances recently. They were a bit weird in my opinion. I was very excited when they first came out because we got balances, but they wouldn't have been the changes that I would make. We got some ships that sort of infringe now on other ships' niches, which means that other ship is now sort of pushed out. We got some ships which were buffed, but not to a level that puts them into the meta. And since then, CCP in a dev blog has sort of committed to doing more frequent changes, but they have effectively only committed to twice per year, which I personally don't think is enough. And they also haven't necessarily committed to, if a ship is buffed and then still underperforming, like bring that up iteratively, but they have committed to fixing things if it's broken. So I would be encouraging CCP to do this more regularly, be more adventurous with it, and get a wider variety of ships into space and competitive with one another, because I think that variety is going to keep people engaged in this game instead of having to fly in the NI all the time.
So I have a follow-up question on that one. And actually, I agree with you. Right, just to be really, really clear, I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit, but actually, I agree that more ship balance passes would be a good thing. How, given like one of the things of Eve, and I'm coming from a slightly nullsec centric perspective, which is like the big wars and all the planning and all the rest of it. How do you allow a game that is effectively a sandbox to play out that stockpiling element that needs to be happen before you do a certain thing if you're continuously shifting the sand? So would you go, well, if a ship's out of balance pass, you go, or you don't touch it for 6 months. But you can do other ship balance passes, you just don't nerf one if you've just done it, because obviously if it comes into the meta,
Yeah.
people buy it, and then if you immediately rip that rug away from them, that also can lead to quite bad will from a lot of players.
So there's a sanity check like aspect to this, right? In that, like, say you take, I don't know, let's pick a random ship. Let's take a Drake, a Tormentor. Let's take a Tormentor. If every week
That is a
I
very
switch
random
this, if every week I switch the slot layout of a Tormentor, nobody's going to want to use the Tormentor, right? Because it might be really good, but I might change it again next week. These need to be spaced out and iterative in a way that doesn't just like really swing the power level of a ship. And that is part of the frequency thing. Is you pick a ship, you make a meaningful change to it to try and bring it in, and then you adjust that change up and down. And that means they're going to have to do a lot of thinking about what that initial change is. But yeah, it shouldn't just be we're going to wildly swing the power level of a ship over and over again.
I don't disagree. I was just thinking of a scenario where, like, I know the Marauder gets a buff. It shouldn't ever again. But let's just say the Marauder gets a buff, right? Specifically a reasonably expensive ship. And you don't want a scenario where you do it and then immediately nerf it 3 months later because all of a sudden player sentiment starts to become interesting at that point, I think. But yeah, I think that makes
Absolutely,
sense.
yeah.
And just a question in general. What would you say is a reasonable amount of time between ship balancing changes, in your opinion?
So I think I'm gonna.
That was
Do you
supposed
want to
to
give
be
your
great.
views first? Actually,
Yeah.
you have a view. I have a view as
So,
well. So
I think it depends is the answer. Like, if you make a reasonably large change to a ship and it does nothing, I think that making a change to that ship again, like, quite quickly would be fine. If you make a big change to a ship and it makes it like overpowered in some regard and you bring it back down again, I don't think immediately like trying another way to buff that ship is also, that's going to give people whiplash, in my opinion. There are enough hulls in EVE that we can sort of move between them, and if they do this consistently, I am imagining a beautiful world where ships have enough sort of parity where you can make small changes and sort of shift the meta. I appreciate that's not like a, this many days answer.
No,
but
that's
super
better than
dependent.
it's better than just saying 3 months and then ending.
I mean, I guess
day.
the other answer is maybe more around how far in advance you announce a change can also feed into that, right? Because if you're going to do a patch and then release, then that's probably not enough time. But if you gave people a chance to adapt, get rid of old stockpiles and stuff like that, then you might get a slightly better.
I think that patch notes, especially for ship balances, should be announced before the patch happens.
We as the CSM, not just me and not just Luke, all of the CSM collectively went to CCP and said, get the patch notes out as soon as possible because of this.
Yep.
Okay. All right, guys, it's time to debase yourselves and literally beg. It's time to literally beg for people to vote for Drake. You're already on the CSM. Why do you need a second term? Why didn't you get it done this year?
I would say I chose a very large project to do, which is the complete overhaul of the most unfinished region in the game. And I think the
what? But wormholes don't even have gates yet.
But I think I've proven on CSM 19, which I got on not as an electee but as a selectee. I got selected by CCP, but I've proven that I can do very large scale change, which was data driven, done by feedback from the players of the community. Pochman has gone from basically the buggiest region in the game, and its only export was absurd amounts of ISK in the hands of very tiny amount of people. Over that time, we've completely ripped out the flashpoints. It's been rebuilt, so now all 4 factions work now instead of just the Amar. It's got a lot more E-War, it's a lot more dangerous, it's killing a lot more people. It's printing a lot less ISK along a larger amount of groups. On top of that, one thing that I wanted to do, which I didn't think I would get to do during my first year because it was Podfin, it was essentially abandoned, it was always an uphill struggle, was these small sites were essentially fucking worthless aside from standings. We've a few months ago we managed to get that work in, so that again has been pulled out, rebalanced and put back in. So now it's not just a single pillar of content in Podfin, it's now along a larger swathe of groups, not just strategic nullsec groups or multi-boxes as a haven. There's still a ton more stuff to go. The region still needs an ISK sync, and its LP store is a joke. I have done a lot of work in the background on an LP store rework, but I still need a lot more time to get that in. But I would say CCP put their faith in and trust into me, and I've paid that back tenfold over this year, and I'm hoping to continue my work.
Okay. Frippy, tell us why it's your time.
I think, and I believe that obviously the CSM, if you look at the candidates who publicly have put up forums at the moment, I mean, obviously the candidates that will be announced, there's a lot of veterans and there's a lot of people who've played the game for a while, which you could say is a good thing because they're going to have experience, information, knowledge. Why you should vote for me is because I am relatively new to the game and I'm not afraid to spring out shitty ideas per se, but also good ideas in some people's perspectives, and I can voice a lot of people's opinions in the sense that my Twitch platform, I can voice their opinions to CCP more directly. I'm not afraid to sort of say my own opinion at the cost of biting off my own face, you know. And I have this sort of air of freshness, you know. I still have hope and love and faith for this game, and I'm not a better vet.
Is that a selling point?
Not a bitter vet. It probably is, yeah.
Think so?
Yeah, there's
Yes.
like there's always a trade-off, right? Not being a bit of that is sometimes a good thing. New ideas is sometimes a good thing. It is a double-edged sword, though, right?
Yeah.
And there's almost certainly a lot of I've got this really good idea. Has this been done before, and did this go horribly wrong before saying it? Because there's been a lot of iterations over the 20 years of like this is a good idea and it's not.
And I will say that of the CSM, CCP do need new players, so would be helpful, even if they're not experienced in the game, to get their viewpoint from a new player perspective. Whether that is Frippy or Mike, who's been on the CSM a load of times, or even Kashal Aderon, who runs eRookies, having someone who is either themselves a relatively new player, who has that experience fresh in their mind, or has a group of new players from which to get data from, I don't think that would ever be a bad slot of the 12 slots for a CSM.
Okay. And Peace, why you?
Indeed, why me? So I have played this game for a long time, but I wouldn't describe myself as particularly bitter. I have been observing EVE as a whole for a long time, and I think I have a clear view now of things that need to change. I am confident that we can get them changed. As Drake said, it's important to be data-driven. It's important to be open to new ideas. I have this clear view, but I am willing to be challenged with it and make difficult decisions. I will admit when I'm wrong. I will admit when I don't know something. Yeah, I'm confident. I'm very driven to do this, and relentlessly pursuing the improvement of PvP. But pursuing the improvement of PvP means improving everything else in the game as well. So, the Peace moves for CSM, I guess.
Thank you. Luke, you are getting ready to take your CSM break and instead spend all of that time ratting in a Phoenix Navy issue once Frippy gets it to be a little bit safer. Any final thoughts?
Sorry, that made me laugh. My Phoenix Navy has only ever seen PvP, FYI. I think no. The only thing I want to add, and I've said this kind of every CSM campaign since I've been on the CSM as well. So it's just remembering what the CSM is for, right? Ultimately, it's a focus group. You'll see a lot of posts and a lot of people going, "I'm going to turn up to CCP and I'm going to demand A, B, C, D, and E." And that is the quickest way to make software developers tell you to go away. Speaking as a software developer, if someone turned up who knows nothing about it and went, "Do this because you're wrong," you're just going to get ignored. There's the one.
CP, please change this integer to 1 instead of 2.
You're quite. It's you for anybody that's looking at candidates. You want to look at candidates that are approaching it from a realistic perspective of what they're going to go try and achieve and their understanding of what the CSM actually is, not what they would wish it to be. And Fan, you've been on the CSM. You know this. Drake, you know this. And that's probably my passing thought on the subject.
All right, cool. Thank you, all three of you, for sort of coming here to publicize and be willing to talk live about your issues. I know that a number of candidates every year don't really like to be tested. Some candidates don't have a lot of interaction, and so thank you for doing that for us and for people that tuned in for it. And
I would like to say one more thing before we finish, which is applicable to all candidates. If you're listening to this, please remember that CSM works off of the single transferable vote system. So you're going to have a bunch of slots that you can drop people into, and you prioritize them depending on who you want the most. Please fill out all these slots with people who you think are relevant to you, because if one of them doesn't get in, the next one might. I think it's really important for people to engage with that aspect instead of just putting like one bloke in. Yeah.
Important to remember on that topic, your block tells you ballot to you. Make sure you follow that.
Hey, listen, they've given you everything. The least you could do is fulfill their leaders' political desires, rather.
Just click the link and click submit. It's easy.
Trade off a you receive SRP, I receive CSM candidates.
Managed democracy.
As ever, thank you for hosting us, Redline.
Also, thank you for having us. Thank you for the invite. It was nice. Thank you. It's been fun. It's been fun chatting to you guys, especially for the amount of people here who are currently on CSM or have been in CSM. It's nice to be around more experienced people and get a clear, wider perspective upon who I'm running against and with, because it's not all about sort of, as this has shown, we've got similar ideas, opposing ideas, but at the end of the day, we're all people. I mean, you run for public office, which this kind of is. I know it's a focus group, but it's a publicly elected position. You should be able to talk and mediate with the other people running beside you.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Redline, it's all yours.
That is
pushing a single button on OBS.
Which button's that? Sorry.
Hey, listen, any button you like, but the rest of us need to go to the toilet or get a snack. Or
I think we need to watch a 20-second video, a 20-second made video.
A 20-second video.
Sorry, a 2-minute video that took 20 minutes to make.
I think everybody needs to rush to the system of Gateway in Genesis, where there's currently an officer cruiser active.
Ooh.
Go on your Pythons.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of our Pythons that we all have.
Anyways, it's Phantomite. We're gonna send the stream off to some fancy. You guys have fun watching, and see you next week. We have a lot more CSM stuff planned, huh?
Yeah, we do.
It'd be crazy
more
if
of
you
this,
mentioned
but not
at
just more of
least
this.
A little bit of it.
We're going to be talking to more CSM candidates as voting season approaches. I have so little. I need to talk like a lot faster. We're going to be seeing a lot more candidates, and Redline has plans so that we can host some kind of a debate where people get voted off or something like
I love that.
for the people, but it's going to make good viewing.
Okay, now say bye. Everyone say bye really quickly.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.